On this week's episode of the Autohaus podcast,
like you were saying, like you spent like so many nights working on that car. I've spent so many nights working on my car and I didn't see my friends, and I haven't seen my friends in months and stuff like that. And these are the sacrifices you have to make to achieve that. And it's fine, but at the same time, you got to find a balance. And I don't know if you recorded that part in the beginning about passion first and the rest will follow. But yes, like you said, you got to be careful with that because you have to find your balance. You can't just put all your time into this one thing because it might not return at the end of it, Like it's like...
This man needs no introduction. Chris Mann, a fan favorite on the podcast. What's up, dude?
What's up, man?
So for this episode, I called you out here in person because I wanted you to have the special episode number 100.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I know just not too long ago, we talked about like the analytics for the podcast and like I can see how many people per country listen to the podcast. And I was telling you, I forgot what it was. It was like, yeah, man, like 60 people in Ireland like listen to the podcast. And you were like, dude, I remember when 60 people total listened to the podcast.
Yeah, no, that's insane, man. How are your numbers looking now, if you don't mind me asking?
So between 2,500 and 3,000. My next goal is to get 3,000 listens per month.
Wait, like per month?
Yeah, per month.
That's insane, man. Like, dude, you literally took that 60 per month and multiplied it, man, like by fucking like 550. Yeah, but yeah, dude, like that's insane. Like, yeah, no, that's crazy. Keep it up, man. No, I every time I heard all your guests from a different country chiming in, like like Seb or you guys from Ireland, I forgot his name. But dude,
D-Mac, how are you gonna forget
D-Mac?
D-Mac?
No, I was just forgetting. No, sorry, I was forgetting who it was that was from Ireland. But yes, D-Mac. And dude, like I just couldn't believe it, man. I was just like, you're to me, I guess, and I guess it's because we both live in San Jose. It's just, to me, San Jose is just a small town in California. Like, it's not LA, obviously. So not LA or San Diego or anything like that. So it's cool to me that like people from all around the world are tuning in just to listen to one guy from San Jose talk about Corollas, because it's amazing that that's how many people love these cars, It's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that just because like over time, this is the second year of the podcast and how my like goal or mission for the podcast has changed for these 2 years. And like, as of the moment, I mean, for me personally, I just want to hear people's stories from around the world. Like if you got a Corolla in another country, I want to see how you live or like how you live with this car, what the history of this car has been for you, right?
Yeah.
So before we were talking about this, we were talking about that Speed Hunters article.
Oh, yeah, man. Congrats on that.
Thank you. I definitely do not deserve congrats because like I would like to give more thank yous to that article rather than like I deserve anything. Like, I mean, like Trevor for shooting it. Like if it wasn't for Eric, like I would have no part of that article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess a better way to put it then is as one of your customers, seeing that made me happy because I personally feel like you deserved the recognition. Like, okay, maybe it wasn't like an actual like achievement in your eyes or anything, but to me, I feel like it was the acknowledgement you kind of deserved as like, because for me, I'm one of your customers, you've worked on my car, you've helped me prep my track car, like, and so, those are the moments I remember about when I saw that article. So for me, that's the feelings that were invoked when I saw it at least. So I was happy for you, man. So
appreciate it.
So I mean, just take it as it is, I guess. Like, so it's good, man. I think it's good.
I think for me, I got a lot of feels, like a lot of good reminiscing off of that article. And then the other was a lot of oh shits. Like I saw the Fidanza flywheel and then like I remember like, dude, some of the days with that car were like so many hard days with that car that like brought me back to those moments. Because I've even told Eric a few times, like, dude, this is like a specialty, like British hand built car. And, this is obviously it's not going to be easy, but we didn't find out how difficult until we actually got our hands on it. But just funny to reminisce, like, oh yeah, I forgot that I put that part on. That was a hard ass day.
Yeah. No, I mean, personally, I still remember you guys putting those videos out. So to me, it doesn't seem that long ago, I guess. But man, 2 years ago, that's quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, you were still in the garage then. So
yeah. And then definitely very blessed, but like very blessed that Grant from Battle Garage offered me a real shop space so that I could go legit.
Yeah, man.
But I also want to say to like people who think about like want to take this kind of path of, not business ownership, but like doing it out on your own, whether you freelance or whatever, like you really have to put the work in. Like you see that Speed Hunters article, you don't realize that, those 2 years, like almost every holiday I can remember, like Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's, I'd probably be at like Eric's place or Eric would be at my garage and we'd be grinding it out on either his Lotus or his Corolla. And it's like, I see, like a lot of people may see the end like, oh, you're in that Speed Hunters article, but for a lot of people, like you don't see like the work that was put into it. So that's one thing I would caution a lot of people is, you see people who have like quote unquote made it. What you don't see is like all the work they had to put in to like get into this point, right?
Oh man, no, I mean, I agree because I remember so for me, like part of the pressure of owning a Corolla as a college student was trying to keep it running because that was my only car. And then like, just like, you have to keep it in good shape to drive to school every day. And I remember like just the stresses of having to rebuild my motor. You remember after I swallowed the screw and I like tried to get that done like before class.
Rebuild the motor twice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've rebuilt it twice at this point, but I just like the stress of it all. And at the end of it, I mean, I think like I want to say the photos I took of my 4AG were probably one of the most popular photos I've had on Instagram. It had a lot of likes. It's very easy to look at the photo and be like, this is a beautiful engine. But it's like, you didn't know what I had to go through to put that thing together, man. It's just very stressful. And I mean, I'm like literally thinking about the same thing about my wiring right now. I'm wiring a standalone into my car currently, for those of you guys that don't know. And I remember just like stepping back from it after working for like maybe like 6 or 7 hours that day and thinking like, well, one, I was thinking like I could have paid someone to do this. Like I didn't save anything from doing the wiring myself because I had to buy the wiring, I had to buy all the sheathing, I had to buy all the materials to put it together and the tools too, the crimping tools and stuff. And then all that ends up costing several $100s and you'll forget stuff and you got to order more stuff. And then, like a Panic harness costs like I want to say $700-800. Shout out to Panic. But it's probably worth it because you didn't have to buy the materials, you didn't have to buy the tools, you didn't have to think about how to size out the wiring or anything like that. So it's kind of worth it, but so at the end of it, I kind of took a step back and I was like, dude, I literally could have just paid someone to do this. But while I was doing all this, I learned how to diagnose a car like electrically, right? Like, oh, something didn't work. I knew how to pull out the multimeter. I knew where to look. I knew where to probe. And I only knew that because I was spending a lot of times reading like wiring diagrams and stuff. And so where I'm going with this is that the time that you put into it doesn't always get returned to you, like at all. Like I spent like, I want to say like at least like 24 hours of like sheathing and like wrapping the wires and like taping them off and everything. And it was just like, oh man, like I don't think the return is there. But the lessons you learn from it are so valuable. But you have to ask yourself at the end, like, was that worth it? Because then like now that I'm like towards the end of it, it's like I probably would pay someone to do my wiring next time, just purely save the time. Not because I don't know how to do it, but it's just like what's more valuable to you, like sitting there wrenching on the car all day or like enjoying your time with your family, your friends. Because then like you were saying, like you spent like so many nights working on that car. I've spent so many nights working on my car and I didn't see my friends, and I haven't seen my friends in months and stuff like that. And these are the sacrifices you have to make to achieve that. and it's fine. But at the same time, you got to find a balance. And I don't know if you recorded that part in the beginning about passion first and the rest will follow. But yes, like you said, you got to be careful with that because you have to find your balance. You can't just put all your time into this one thing because it might not return at the end of it, you know. Like it's like you like people don't see the side of you that was like you like sometimes like I go through a mental breakdown like putting this stuff together, man. Like the part that they didn't see. So like I like sheathing a wire, you have to do it from the beginning of the wire, like, and if all the other branches, if you missed one, you have to take it completely apart just to redo it again. And they you know, these are the things you don't think about when you're getting into it. So I spent so much time doing that is where I'm trying to go with this. And it's like, it definitely wasn't worth it. And I could have spent that time doing something else, I guess, doing something more productive. And so, yeah, no, it's definitely got to know your limits, I guess, and when to step back and everything. So it's not all like work, because it's like you can get burnt out too, you know? So
yeah, curious you say that because I always think about that kind of theory a lot. You could have a project or something you burn a lot of time into, and a lot of times I second guess myself, like I burn all this time into this project. Will the end goal really bear fruit for me, right? Or the other way to think about it is like, I could have burned a little more time and I could have crossed that tipping point. What if I never crossed that tipping point?
Yeah.
But then it's like an internal struggle, right?
No, yeah, it really is. No, because then like that's the thing is sometimes you don't even know the outcome of these things while you're doing them. And then it's when you take the step back, that's when you realize like, okay, I did it. But was it worth it? You know, like that's the question you ask next, right? So I mean, like no regrets doing the wiring myself, but it's just it makes me think about these things because it's like I very easily at this point could have just paid someone to do the wiring for me. You know? So
I'll give you a good example. So the vintage air product for the Corolla, I sacrificed a month of customer work to develop that product. And that's one of those where it was like, I have to bet that this is going to work out in the end. And I'm still not done with that project yet.
Yeah.
So we're still at this like in limbo. And I still have to find that balance, right? Like if I burn some more time into this project and get it finalized, will it bear fruit? Or do I need to just like cut this out? Because not only did I burn a month of my time, it's like a month of shop labor plus that $4,000 to be a vintage air dealer.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like doing Autohaus, running the Autohaus full time, it's almost like every one of these projects, every one of these cars that comes in, it's always a decision, right? Like this tipping point.
Yeah. Yeah, it really just becomes a game. Like you're just trying to allocate all your time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been here majority of the evening. The burning question I've been trying to ask that I didn't want to burn up before we did the podcast was like, what's the status of your car right now?
Yeah, no, so I'm completely wired, almost completely wired. So when I say that, the electric fans are wired, my idle air control valve is wired, my map sensor is wired, I have all the injectors wired, all the coils wired, I have all my triggers so that my crank sensor wired, I have the distributor wired up to be a cam sensor, and I really just need 3 more sensors, and that's the intake air temperature sensor, the water temperature sensor, and the throttle position sensor. And the reason why I was waiting for those is because the throttle position sensor is determined by the ITB adapter plate, which I was waiting for, and it actually just arrived today, so I can get started on that again. But I had to wait for that, and also I was going to mount the intake air temperature sensor on the filter plate for the Piper Cross plate. So I had to wait for the adapter for that as well. And because the water temperature sensor is going to be on the same branch, I had to wait for the other ones to be done before I could finish the water temperature sensor. So
just a reminder for the audience, 16 valve, silver top ITBs, SQ ITB adapter, Link, what model?
Link Atom X.
Okay.
Coil-on plug conversion, the SQ.
Is the Monsoon after that?
The Monsoon's after that,
Dude, do you know Sush Pants?
Yes.
So he said he should have upgraded up to the Monsoon because he ran out of outputs.
I didn't run out of outputs, but I can see why someone would run out of outputs really quick. And I'll line that out for you right now.
Yeah.
So with the Atom, you get 4 auxiliary outputs. And with the Monsoon, you get 6. And so right now, I have 3 of those auxiliary outputs being used. I have one for the fans, one for the idle air control, and one for the fuel pump control. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of that, but basically it controls the circuit opening relay. It controls the ground for the circuit opening relay now, instead of the flap for the airflow meter. And so that's only 3. But so I'm also installing a link dash as well. And so
you're getting rid of your cluster?
Yeah. So you would have to typically use one of those outputs to control your tach. And then that's 4. That's 4 out of 4 right there, right? And that's not including your check engine light, which you probably don't need anymore because you can just hook up your computer to the ECU and it'll tell you all your fault codes. But the problem is now you don't know if your check engine lights are coming on while you're driving.
If there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only concern I can see. So say you didn't have an idle air control valve, then you could probably fit the check engine light output in there. But say you want to add AC and all this other stuff, then yeah, you're capped out all 4 outputs. Now, personally, I don't think I need a monsoon, but looking back on it, if I had the extra couple $100, I would definitely buy the monsoon just to have the extra leeway. And so I listened to Mark's podcast. Shout out to Bad Boy Mark. And so the funny thing was, you did a podcast with him, and I remember you guys bringing up the fact that I bought the Atom, and I think you asked him what's a good starting point, or how do you know what you need out of ECU? And then Mark said it himself that an Atom will probably do what I needed to do, on a 4AG at the very basic level, right? Yeah, I only used 3 out of the 4 auxiliary outputs, but I completely agree with his statement saying that maybe if you're planning to stay in this for a long time, you should probably just invest in the better one. Because I think he bought the one with the integrated wideband in it. I think that was the reason why he bought it. But I agree with that statement because say you do want to get a different car or something like that, you could potentially pull that ECU out and put it in that better car. And it's no longer an investment just for that one car. You could think of it as a tool, not a part, right? It's what can this computer do for me? What can it control for me? And then, because if you don't end up using, I think the one he has can control up to 8 cylinders or something like that. If you don't use, because we only have 4 cylinders, you can use all of those extra outputs for the ignition and fuel injectors. You can use those as auxiliary outputs. You can convert those into sensors or whatever. And it's it just expands the capabilities of the ECU. So say it's for someone that wants all the extra sensors and to know everything that the car is doing, then yeah, it'd be good to have that extra leeway, right? So that you can install extra sensors and stuff. Because right now I'm maxed out on sensors. I only have 1 extra sensor input. Luckily, I have the dash, so I could run, extra sensors. But otherwise, I'm also tapped out on sensors. So say you want to add a fuel pressure sensor, or some exhaust gas temperature sensor, or something like that.
That was exactly on my mind. Loy Song said, one thing that drag race cars have above road race cars, they have EGT sensors for every single cylinder.
Exactly. Yeah. So then that's 4 sensors that you have to put in. That Atom and even that monsoon will not handle it. So then it depends on the end user, really. If you need to build a competitive race car, yes, it might be worth it to pay that extra just to get the Storm or whatever it is up there, because you actually need the extra features. Actually, one of the biggest ones that I would say is knock control. I think the newer and the higher end Lynx have knock control, which is important in a higher performance engine, because you don't. What it can do is the moment it detects knock, it can just dial back your timing, and then you won't knock anymore. Or it could just the moment it detects too much knock, you could just shut down the whole engine, or you could retard the just cut off ignition, cut off fueling.
I was gonna say, in modern cars, knock is probably one of the most important, because we have cars running almost 13-to-1 compression.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And then they manufacturers design it so you technically, quote unquote, can run it on 87.
Yeah.
So knock is one of the most important sensors on the car.
Exactly, because it just tells you how much timing you can run on it. But yeah, no. So I mean, so for someone like me, I don't ever plan on racing my Corolla competitively. Only if, like, fun track days.
You say that now.
Yeah. But I mean, I only plan on doing track days with my friends. I don't ever plan on setting like sub 2 in it or anything, because I have to K swap it and do all this. I don't want to do that to the Corolla, And then so I know that at the end of the day, that Link Atom would do everything I needed to do. But now, having done this myself, I definitely agree with Mark. And I think if you see yourself doing this a lot, like, or EFI tuning, I guess, then maybe you should invest in the better one, especially if you plan on tuning yourself, because that's when you'll really get like bang for buck, I guess, because like you have so much possibilities with the standalone ECU that it's like, it's also like, I guess the other way to look at it is that you have all these features, and if you don't know how to use it, it's also kind of useless, right? So, I mean, the Link Atom might be perfect for someone that's not a tuner, that's going to take it to a tuner and not going to mess with it themselves, Because then, like, if you're going to mess with it yourselves, then you kind of want like all the features to play around with. I know one guy, I don't think he listens to the podcast, but his Instagram handle is still Rolla, and this guy he actually owns a 90s Corolla, not even the AE92s or anything, but like like your mom's sedan Corolla, and he has like a 2ZZ supercharged swap in that thing. It's pretty crazy. But then like he kept on maxing out all the features of his Link, because what he did was he bought the Link, and then he started setting it up, and then he was just like, oh, I can install this sensor, I can install that sensor, I can do this, I can do that. And he started installing all of them, but he would slowly max out his ECU. And then he recently just upgraded to, I don't remember the names of all these. I think it's the Extreme, which is one of the higher end ones, just so that he can run like drive-by-wire and stuff like that. And it's like, keep in mind, this is an old 90s Corolla. And then like he's just doing it just because he can. And he's just like, well, I have all these features, I should set it up.
Yeah. I tell customers all the time, I'm not the standalone guy, I'm not the wiring guy, but this stuff definitely intrigues me. Like, you can program like flat shift, two-step, all with this standalone.
Yeah, no, so at the very basis of it, the Atom can run flat shift. I think the Monsoon can do launch control. So it's like, these ECUs are very powerful, actually. So, I mean, I think the other thing was I think that the market's just very oversaturated now, because the way I understand it, doing all this research, was that back in the day, like I want to say early 2000s, I wasn't even working on cars then, but the way it seems from my research is that there were like ECUs, right? But then like the ones that were good were the ones that stood out, like AEM or Haltech and Link is one that's coming up nowadays. But I think what it was back in the day, like they just didn't have that many features. And all these companies were like, coming out with breakthrough features. And then nowadays, like you're getting entry level ECUs that can do, here's a good example. I talked to Koji, shout out to Koji. And Koji told me that some of the ECU nowadays are so powerful, because then back in the day, Takao Ono, so Koji worked on Takao Ono's car. One of the engines he had was the Formula Atlantic engine, right? And so Koji actually told me that in order to run that engine, he had to get a Cosworth ECU just to run it, because like there's like different injection, like tool injectors or whatever. And then like, was that the engine that had the plenum on it, the ITBs on it?
I'm not sure, but I kind of understand what you're talking about. Like, he's limited by the technology at the time.
No, yeah. So he had to go with that Cosworth ECU, which is probably worth like, I want to say like over $5-6 grand. Like that's a motorsport. That's like straight up a motorsport ECU. And I think Koji even told me like, it wasn't just the ECU you were buying. You're also buying like consulting and everything. They taught you how like to set this up and stuff. And that was the caliper that you had to go to just to run a Hasselgren engine, right? And then the point he was trying to make is that your low end Link Atom can run that same engine today, but back in the day that wasn't possible. So I think what it is that now you just have a market that's like, I wouldn't say oversaturated, but saturated with like competitors that have all kind of like reached the same amount of technology. And so it's kind of just confusing now, because now you don't know like, well, what's good about this brand? What's good about that brand? They all literally do the same thing. The interface is just different now. And maybe one might have more inputs or outputs than the other. But I think at the core of it, the ECU literally just takes inputs and it outputs something. That's its job. And then computers and parts have gotten so cheap over the years that like now ECUs are like, they're just trying to pack in as many features as they can, you know? So when you're as a consumer looking at all these products, they just kind of like, well, what's the difference between Link or Haltech or AEM? And there's no difference nowadays besides the interface. And I can't say anything about the hardware quality because I'm not an electrical engineer, but the software side of it is very simple. Like it's actually not as complicated as you think. And so all these companies, they're just trying to sell their features now. Like, oh, I have this amount of features on this ECU and stuff. And so your low-end ECU nowadays is actually very capable. Like I said, you can run flat shift on the Link Atom. Like, and I think the only reason why you can't like run like any more extravagant features is because you can't put any more sensors on it. You know, like it's limited by the amount of sensors and outputs it has. So that's literally the only reason, because the software is all the same, you know? So, I mean, so I might have gone off on like a tangent, but it's, where I'm going with this is that it's a lot simpler than some people make it out to be. But at the same time, you know, these companies aren't going to go out there and say like, this is why I'm better than this company. They're just going to try to sell their product, you know? So.
I joke with the new Battle Garage employees that Chris Van always tries to outdo me.
Oh, what do you mean?
What was the first one? I think.
Was it the brakes?
Oh yeah,
I remember you bringing that up when I installed that.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was like, first Chris gets bigger brakes than me. Now he gets a bigger truck than me.
Oh man!
and now he's going full standalone.
Oh,
so yeah, we joked before the podcast like 120, 100 is the number to beat. So
yeah. No, I'm super excited to see what numbers I'm pulling, because I'm actually using your car as my baseline because I haven't dynoed myself. I mean, your car is like built very similarly to mine. Like,
yeah, I think that's what's so cool is that because our builds are so similar, that my baseline should be actually pretty accurate for you.
Yes, no, I agree. I think I agree with that number too, like around 120. Like that feels like what it's doing. So I mean, it would be really exciting to get the dyno results, because then when it comes your turn, it'll be like, oh, well, let's see if it passes that number or not, you know? So
yeah, I'm really envious, man. You're doing exactly what I wish I could do.
Oh man. I mean, well, having done it, I could definitely help you out on it. It's definitely not. So I've talked about this with you a couple of times, and I know I've said it, but it's not as hard as it seems if you have the right material. So like if you have the wiring diagrams and you have a multimeter, and you know how to use it, then you're in good company. Like it should be pretty easy to figure out. Now, if you have wiring gremlins already in the chassis, then I can see why it gets pretty difficult. So, but to anyone out there, it's not as daunting as it seems, because I want to reflect back. Maybe I'm pretty sure I brought it up during my last podcast, but I might have said something like, dude, wiring is not my specialty. And I'll say it again, like, I'm not going to call myself a wiring expert or anything like that, but I was able to figure it out on my own, just like looking at the diagrams. So, I mean, if you're careful and methodical, and if you can figure out the diagram, and then, I mean, it's all there. You have all the tools in front of you. You just kind of have to put it together, right? So, like anything, practice how to use that multimeter, and like you're reading the right things. Cause like at first, dude, I was just double checking the most like mundane things. Like, am I getting 12 volts here? Am I getting 12 volts here? Make sure it's the right circuit. And it's like, I've stared at this wire like for 10 minutes now. I know it's the right wire, but I'm just still being careful because that's my nature. And then by the end of it, I was just like prodding and probing like random things because I was so comfortable with the car already, you know? And yeah, like I said, keep in mind, like it was just a couple of months ago that I said, like, I am terrified of wiring. And so, I would say a Corolla is a good car to learn how to do it on, because it's actually a very simple car. Now, if you could start getting into like your 90s cars and 2000 cars, those cars have CAN bus and stuff in them. It's like, it's going to get so much more complicated. And yeah, I can see why wiring an ECU in a car that has all these electronical systems, like, it could be daunting, but a Corolla would be a good start if you wanted to learn how to wire some things.
You don't give yourself enough credit because there's no 16 valve wire harness, plug and play wire harness on the market forever.
Actually, so I discovered why that's so. And I think my theory on that is because, so I'm sure you've seen the engine harness at this point like a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
And then there's 3 plugs that come into the harness. I mean, to the cabin that plug into the ECU, right? So there's a misconception that those 3 plugs all go into the ECU. 2 of them go into the ECU, and 1 of them goes into the junction box right there next to the ECU. And one of the chassis wires actually comes into the ECU. So there's only actually 2 wires off of that engine harness, 2 plugs off the engine harness that plug into the ECU. And so where I'm going with this is that last plug that plugs into the junction box, that one has to be dissected from your harness basically, because that plug controls your wipers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So then I spent so much time on the internet trying to find that plug and I couldn't find it. So I said, okay, well, I just got to dissect the harness, right? I want to say 2-3 days ago, the Panic Brothers posted a story saying achievement unlocked or something like that. And it was a picture of a bunch of white plugs on a table. That plug is that very plug for the junction box. And I mean, I'm not going to ask them where they found it because I already wired my stuff too. I don't really need it anymore. But that's great news for all the guys that want a plug and play harness, because that plug right there is what's stopping people from making plug and play harnesses. Because that plug also controls your main relay and your circuit opening relay. So I think the way people have been getting around it is that they just wire in a new circuit open relay and main relay. Like they'll just include a relay with their kit so that they could just bypass that completely. But now that they have those plugs, it should be a lot easier to make a plug and play kit.
So how come there's plug and play 20 valve?
I don't know. So from what I'm understanding and what I'm able to dissect from videos and product photos and stuff is that they're wiring their own relays in. Because I didn't have to wire a new circuit open relay or main relay because I just reused them, right? The only relays I ever had to wire was like my fans and idle air control and stuff. And I noticed that all these plug and play harnesses, they all have relays attached to them. But that's only a theory because, like you said, there's plug and play 20 valve harnesses. If they're able to wire those relays separately, they could have definitely done that for the 16 valve as well.
Yeah.
But with the 16 valve, you also have the wiring for like the igniter, and I heard that that's a cause of like it causes a lot of difficulty in trying to do a plug and play swap. Because then I also heard those plugs are hard to get to. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it.
All those 16 valve plugs are hard to get.
Yeah.
I think 20 valve uses regular Toyota plugs.
Yeah, no, so those are still all available. In fact, like it's because you can get those on like the 3S, the 2Js, and yeah, they're all still
like 1UZ, all of those.
Yeah, they're the more modern Denso Toyota plugs. It's just the old ones that are they're all discontinued.
Yeah, I quote Danny. He was like, yeah, a bunch of these plugs are from a Japanese fax machine.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, and they're all super flimsy too. That's the problem.
Oh,
man. They all break. And like, I had one on the distributor that just had connection issues.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I couldn't do it. Like it wasn't the wiring. It was just the way that the connector plugged in. Because what I did was I just pulled the terminal straight out and I plugged the terminal straight in without the connector. And my check engine light went away when I did that. But when I plugged it in with the green plugs, it would be intermittent. And then
you would be surprised. Modern cars have this problem too.
Really, just like weird plug,
so I haven't worked for Subaru in a long time, but the B21 plug is like our like master plug. And those things all the time, because there's like 100 pins in that thing, and it's like it's like, the arm that like it latches the 2 connectors together.
Yeah.
So like all sorts of stuff happens, like pin fit. Sometimes there's casting flash because there's like a plastic connector piece that fits over the front. Yeah, so modern cars have this problem too with connectors.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I don't have a concrete answer. These are all theories of mine of why there's no 16 valve plug and play harness. But having done it myself, that's the only thing I can come up with, because like you can definitely just wire up some relays to bypass the circuit open relay and the main relay, and then boom, you have a working relay system. But I wouldn't say that's completely plug and play, right?
Yeah,
Like, so,
yeah.
so I don't know because I'm not a wiring specialist, but I will tell you, like, this is what I observed from having done it myself. And these are the challenges I reached having done it myself. And it's yeah, definitely sourcing the plugs. So actually, no, I shouldn't say this next part, but no, yeah, I was trying to find all these plugs so that I can make it a complete plug and play kit for myself. But I found myself having to just either reuse old plugs, or two, just like use Deutsch connectors because they're really good connectors. So yeah, I ended up just cutting that plug for the junction box out of my stock harness, and it felt like such a waste because a lot of people were asking me to buy that harness off of me. But then I also was very transparent, and I told them like, hey, this harness has been hacked up a couple times. Like, I wouldn't even feel comfortable selling it to you, even if I were not hacking it up. So sorry. So then, but yeah, no, I could see the difficulty it would take to have a 16 valve plug and play harness. But I mean, it seems like that's what the Panic Brothers are working towards. And then maybe you should just go to them, man, at this point, because it, like, having done it myself, like, I can't say it's worth it unless you want to learn. And I wanted to learn. So, but definitely a question of whether it's worth your time or not. Because then, like, I talked about this with Koji, and I said that, yes, I learned how to do all this and there's no return. But at the same time, like, when you pay someone else to do this, you might not get the level of quality that you expected from it. So it's a trade-off, right? I could have traded some random shop here in the Bay Area to wire it up for me, and they probably would have got the car running just fine. Like, no problems. But is the level of quality the same? Like, did they make the sheathing look nice, or did they size like, at the end of the day, they're a shop. They need to get the car out.
Of course.
Yeah. So unfortunately, there will be some corners cut,
Yeah.
like, so.
But you made a good point about panic wire. Is like, for people like me, like, I have zero time. I really want to learn, but I have zero time.
Yeah.
So if I can buy it off the shelf and it's proven to work, and then plus I can support someone who's supporting the community, I'll do that.
Yeah. No, exactly. I 100% agree. Because then, like I said, like, I would probably even consider paying Panic to do my next car. It's just because, like, I know the time it takes to do this, and I know I can do it. But that's just a personal accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's because I also know Panic is a professional. He does this professionally. It's his profession. He will do this the right way and to a certain quality, so it's like, you can trust him, so.
Dude, I have a story about building or making stuff yourself. So the guy I sold my Supra to, shout out to Brian Pack, he used to be a designer at Ford, and a lot of those designers had like classic American cars, and they'd go to like classic hot rod shows. And he'd be like, what do you think about that thing? And they'd be like, store-bought, whatever. And although that's the counterpoint, is like, there is a lot of pride in like stuff you made yourself. I know, for example, like the 3-pod gauge cluster, somebody asked me like, dude, what site you buy that from? And I almost wanted to say like, I almost wanted to make a joke about it, but I was like, nah, man, I made that thing myself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there is a certain sense of pride of like, where'd you buy that harness from? Like, no, I made it, man.
Yeah. No, it's cool. But, when I considered how much time it took to it, I was like, oh. And now I'm left over with all these tools that I'll probably only ever use once in a while, right? Unless I do another harness. So you got to ask yourself, is it worth it, right?
So just to keep my ego in check, let's talk about the spec of your engine.
Okay, yeah.
So what head gasket are you running? 16 valve, big port head?
So TRD, I think it's 0.8 millimeter or 0.9 or something, whatever. The higher one of the two, because I know that they have two different ones.
Yeah.
Tomei pond cams, HTS valve springs, just a 3-angle valve job, nothing special.
What block are you running?
3-rib.
Wow, so it's still 18 and 40 then.
18. Yeah.
Wow. So almost like exactly the same.
No, it is. Yeah, it's
what pistons?
Just 0.5 over.
Wow, dude, exactly the freaking same.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this, but
yeah.
I think that the only thing that's different is the brands of our valve springs.
You had yours dynamically balanced.
Yeah.
Because for sure, I've driven your car. It runs much freaking smoother than mine.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see if you'll still feel the same after, because now I put the trigger wheel on it and everything.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But
and then the other thing too is like you have the Group A and I have the XL headers.
Yeah,
And the power comes on sooner on yours.
Does it?
Yeah.
So,
but then that means that I might gain at
you
the
get
top
more
end.
top end at the track. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
but then that means like a smaller power band too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so definitely a trade-off. I guess once my car is tuned, then we'll have a better like sense of like how different they are. I mean, it should be exciting either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's the plans with your cars, man? Like, cause then like, I know, you came back from the track day with the Corolla. You were having a couple issues with the brakes, right?
Yeah, that's completely my own fault. Is just I changed, dude. This is what sucks. Is like I've only done one track day this year, and that's in the Corolla. Where like the 9 track days I did last year was all in the FRS.
Yeah, the FRS, yeah.
So, and then the Corolla pretty much like completely changed this year, where it was like, well, I mean, I think you can agree. You put big brakes on the car, that completely transforms the car.
Yeah.
So it's like driving a brand new car again.
Oh yeah, I was like over braking a lot when I just put that thing on. So you gotta learn and get used to it again.
So I had my bias valve adjusted incorrectly.
Actually, I gotta apologize for you on that one too, because you were asking me a lot of questions about that, and I did tell you to like, maybe put more in the rear, but I guess I didn't realize how much you actually put in the rear. And then because I clearly because I remember you asked me like, hey, did I lock up in the front or the rear? And I remember I told you like, you locked up in the front. You're definitely locking up front.
And then you saw the video, right?
I watched the video, exactly. I watched the video and it was from my own GoPro. And I saw it clearly, like, no, he locked up the rear tires first. And I was like, I literally sabotaged this guy for like maybe the first 2 track sessions. First 2 track sessions that day.
It's okay. Dude, I still had a lot of fun that day. It's not a big deal.
Oh, it's good, man. That's good.
But the other thing too was because I was still used to those FC brakes, I was running a more aggressive pad in the rear. So like everything hurt me that day was like running a more aggressive rear pad, not having the bias valve adjusted right. Dude, yeah. So it's not a big deal.
No,
I mean,
you were like running on X amount of sleep, right? Like very little.
Oh, yeah. So thank you so much, Grant, because I did not take a break that month just to get your car running. So
no, it's okay, man.
Yeah.
You have your days and you have tougher ones too. So.
Yeah.
But as long as you had fun, man. I was a little worried that you weren't having a good time that day, but as long as you had a good time. Yeah, it's always good having like more than one Corolla on the track too. So I don't think we got a chance to talk about that yet, huh? We had 3 Corollas on track at the same time. Not on the corkscrew at the same time, unfortunately, but we had 3 Corollas on track at the same time nonetheless.
In the same session.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was the first for me personally, because I know you've done a couple already with other Corollas, but right?
A few times, but still like really rare in NorCal.
Oh yeah,
to even have like one out there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm a little jealous of the SoCal guys, prodding at you guys a bit, but no, like I see you guys getting together.
Where do you see the Corolla in sense of like these like open events, like open drift days and open track days? Where do you see the future of Corollas?
The future. Oh, what do you mean, like the appearance or just the people, the reactions? Or,
like,
or
so I'll kind of
like,
premise this for you. I'm optimistic for the future. Like I see more classic or golden era chassis out at the track more than ever. Like for sure, I see a bunch of like golden era Hondas that normally don't come out to the track in NorCal.
So maybe a year ago, I would have disagreed with you. But yeah, no, for all the better, honestly, I've noticed the same thing, because then it was maybe a year ago that I went to the racetrack, Thunderhill West, and I walked the paddock, and I remember just thinking to myself, this is the most boring paddock I've ever seen. Like, not even Miatas in the fleet. Like, there was maybe 2 or 3 Miatas. The rest were S2000s, FRS, BRZ, CTR, and maybe like a couple E46s or something, some kind of BMW in one form or another. And then I was just like, dude, what happened? Like the racetrack used to just be filled with like random Civics and EFs and like a Miata, like a army of Miatas, Subarus, and like just a large variety of cars. And then after a while, you just see all these BRZ, FRS, like just the same cars over, and not taking anything away from those cars, of course, but just the variety was gone. I was a little sad because I remember just one of the most exciting things for me, and it still is, when arriving to the track, is seeing the variety of cars. I always like to do what's called a paddock walk, and it's just like right after I set up everything, I just walk the paddock once.
Or I think last time we went to Buttonwillow, we walked the hotel parking lot.
Yeah, no, we even walked the hotel parking lot. Yeah, that's true. But then I like to see what people like bring to the track. It's always been something that interested me, and then it got a little boring for a while. And it's good that you brought up Buttonwillow, because I went to Buttonwillow and I remember walking the paddock and thinking like, this looks like a Super Street magazine. Like, not only do you see Hondas, but you see very high caliber builds of Hondas. Like, not the types of, sorry NorCal, but not the type of Hondas you see out here in NorCal. Like, you would see like stuff you would see in Honda tuning or Super Street or import tuner, like that quality of build, the shaved tucked bay, and then like just beautiful engine parts. But then these guys were beating them on track, and I thought that was amazing.
I think I think because Buttonwillow is closest to us. Buttonwillow's one of those tracks that I always look forward to going to, because it's halfway between NorCal, halfway between SoCal, so you get to see a lot more variety.
Yeah.
And for me, those like Kanjo Wangan style golden era Hondas that you never see, and the cleanest, right? The cleanest ones, and they're doing an open track day.
Yeah, no, and that's what amazed me, was that like I think I saw I might be wrong on this, but you know who Ryan Durr is, right?
Yeah.
I think I saw his EK out there. I don't know if it was Ryan Durr's. It might have been one of the Ryans. you know who exactly who I'm talking about, right? In the Honda scene.
Yeah.
But it was the white EK. I think it was Ryan Novak.
Okay.
I might have the wrong names, but it's a white EK K24, and it had like 17-inch like T37s on it. This was a Honda tuning car. I know for a fact this was on Honda tuning or a Super Street or whatever. And then like I was just blown away by the fact that it was right there in front of me at the racetrack. Because up until then, I kind of like grew an image of these cars like, oh, these are very well-built cars, but they just probably never end up on a racetrack, just end up at your next IBOC meet or something. But no, here he was proving me wrong, blasting down the front straight like with his turbo, and it's just like loud as hell car. And I was just like, I didn't know people actually did this with their cars, like built these like show car looking cars and like went out and raced them. And like it honestly inspired me to build my car even more clean, because it's just, you can have a clean car and drive it hard as well, like you don't have to have your car doesn't have to look shitty just because you're driving it hard, Dude,
so someone we both used to work with told me something really important that really made me think, was that SoCal, one thing they really understand is that your track car still needs to look good. Because I mean, here's just one perfect example. A sponsor's not going to put their name on a crappy looking car.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it just shows like the kind of pride you take in the build or the kind of car you're driving, right? So, I mean, it does translate is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like the little details do translate,
Dude, so I'll tell you a personal story too. So Jeff Wolfson, he told me back when he was doing Formula D, he got sponsored by a quote unquote replica wheel company. And for him, as like a broke kid, he was like, oh, cool, like they'll give me free wheels. But because he took that sponsorship with a replica company, another sponsor dropped him because they were like,
we don't want to be like associated.
We don't want to be associated with this like bullshit replica wheel company.
Yeah.
And that's when he learned that day. He was like, oh shit, like sometimes like image does matter, right? In certain circumstances, right?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a tricky one too, because in like Formula Drift, like, well, you're spending so much money to compete, so you just gotta like take what you can sometimes, but then people will beat you up on that sometimes, so it's a tough one, man, because I think that's the thing some people don't understand though, is that when they see the big trailer and everything, like they think like this guy's a baller, he has all the money to do this stuff, but in reality, like he's spending every dime he has just to get out there in that trailer. Like, like the sponsors are what's helping him do that, know? So
I mean, I've said this before on the podcast. Grant has told me he's had a couple friends that have tried an FD and essentially failed miserably, plus 30 or 50 G's in debt just from racing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only aware of this because I talked to people like Jeff, or like I've watched the documentary where they were talking about this very phenomenon where like, oh, you see a big trailer roll up and you think this guy's a baller, and it's like, no, dude, he's sacrificing a lot just to be out there, Yeah. No, that's why it's a tough one with the sponsors, man. Because then, like, from the outside point of view, it's like so easy to bash the guy that picked up a sponsor from like Rhoda, but at the same time, it's like I don't have like thousands of dollars to blow on like wheels every time I break them, man. Like that's just the reality of racing, man. You break things, So
almost everything becomes a consumable.
Exactly. It's not even. You put it really good. Like everything becomes a consumable. Like parts that were like non-consumables are now consumables. Yeah, exactly. So it's just a game we play,
Yeah.
So that's a tough one,
So something I'm interested in asking, that now you have a legit daily. What is the Corolla now to you?
Oh yeah. So that was I had kind of like an internal conflict at first, because at first I was like, well, what do I even need this for anymore? Because then like, I'm not going to hop in my Corolla to go get in and out, like that's for sure, like, but it's like, it's actually made me enjoy owning the Corolla more, because actually I didn't realize. So just a heads up for you guys that think like, hey, I'm a teenager, I need to own this car. Like I'm going to be fine daily driving it every day because it's my passion. You will get used to it. Yes, you will get used to driving the car every day, and you will normalize it into your own like thing, right? But here's the thing is that you don't realize like how much of a toll it is taking on you until you take a step away from it. So here's an example, is that the way I used to take trips around the Bay Area or do run errands or anything is that I used to try to do everything in one shot. I would try to plan out my route so that it would be the shortest as possible, and that I would have to make the least amount of short stops as possible. And just so that it would just be as smooth. I wouldn't be stuck in traffic for a long time. And I never realized why, or even the fact that I was doing this until I got into my daily. And I realized it's because, well, it's hard driving this car everywhere, man. It's hot. There's no AC. Manual steering.
I mean, even the physical act of getting in the car, because both of us have bucket seats.
Bucket seats, exactly. That's a big one that people don't realize when they think, I'm going to throw my bucket seat in a daily driver. That's the worst decision you can make, because that actually, so maybe you guys under 25 don't understand, but as you grow over 25, getting in and out of that seat is very tiring. Like actually getting in and out of that seat just for a track day. Dude,
so we shot the video for NX last weekend.
Yeah.
And I remember like Taylor Chase, he asked me to get in the car, and I got I got in regularly, right? Regularly. And then I came back out and he was like, can you get in that thing faster? And I was like, what the fuck you mean get in that thing faster? So I literally had to like Dukes of Hazzard jump into my bucket seat. Dude. So
yeah, no. And then, so that's, you don't realize how uncomfortable the car actually is until you step away from it. So I bought this car in 2016, and I
daily drove it.
And I daily drove it for 4 years to school and work every single day. Oh, and here's the other thing too. In the summers, like I noticed I would travel more at night, or like in the morning, or I would try to get all my errands done in the morning. Why? Because it's hot as shit during the day. And so you don't realize it, but this stuff affects the way you live your life, man. So then like I got into the 4Runner and I realized I no longer cared about running errands. I no longer cared about having to make multiple stops or do this or that. And yeah, I mean, like maybe it's just me growing old, but at the same time, it's like you gotta like realize what you're doing to yourself every day. Because then like what happened was during COVID hit around March, right? Everyone universally agrees it like hit around then. I got sent home around then from school. So I didn't drive the car from March until like June, until I finished my semester. That's just because I was so busy with schoolwork. And I remember going out for a drive with my friends, and we did like a long drive. You've done Mount Hamilton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you gone up to the observatory?
Have not.
Okay, so if you go all the way up to the observatory, you can actually go on the back of the hill, and it will take you out to like, it's like Modesto or something like that.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it takes you out pretty far. But so basically we did the back route. We took the freeway out to like, I think it's Modesto. I might be wrong. And then we went out there and we went the back route up to Lick Observatory and then down Mount Hamilton and then back home. And that was maybe like a 4 or 5 hour drive. We started at like, I want to say 8. Oh, actually, sorry. That we started at around 11 and it lasted around 4 or 5. Yeah, so maybe 4 or 5 hours ish. Yeah. And keep in mind, that's the first time I drove the car since being in quarantine. And I just remember thinking like, when did this car get so loud? When did this car get so hot? And I just remember thinking like, I am physically tired of driving this car right now. And I realized what it was is because I just, in the last like 4 months of sitting at home, I just desensitized myself from driving my car. So now all of these things suddenly seem so much more intense. Like I never remembered my exhaust sounding that loud before, but it like, my friend told me like maybe you should put earplugs on. And so now when I street drive the car and I have the windows down, I have earplugs on the side. Just to put on. Yeah, no, it actually makes that much of a difference. So I know it makes it sound like a terrible experience, but driving the 4Runner every day, it's such a it's such a big difference. It's so quiet. It's raised up. The other day it rained and I drove through the rain. I remember thinking like, it's so quiet. I don't hear any water splashing on the underside of the car or anything. And I was just like, this is so comfortable to drive. And I don't even think anything of it when I drive it. But at the same time, it's allowed me to hop into my Corolla now and enjoy it. Because now it's like, I get all the inputs in the Corolla. Like it's like, I feel the road and like, it's like, and then so and then you're also in a stick shift now, and it's just like you feel more free again in a certain sense that you could control the car with every limb of your body. But doing that every day, maybe not that great. Man. Yeah. So the short answer is it's made me appreciate my Corolla so much more as a fun/weekend car. And I don't mind it being demoted to that just because of the current state of the car. Because like, value is going up. People aren't getting better at driving, and they're getting more distracted than ever now too because of smartphones and stuff. So I personally can't trust other people. It's not that I can't trust myself to drive the car.
Yeah,
I can't trust other people.
Yeah, it's exactly like riding a motorcycle. You can be the best rider in the world, but like it's that dude on his phone.
Exactly, and then I'm not willing to take that risk anymore.
Yeah.
And not driving the car every day has allowed me to once again enjoy the Corolla when I drive it on the street or something like that. Because now it's only once in a while. And now it's like, oh, this is so refreshing. Just opening up the throttle, and just like having the throttle response. And then just even like the way that the handling feels is so much more direct, So, I mean, it's made me appreciate the car more. I definitely think it was the right move because personally, I don't know if I talked to you about this. That 4Runner is not cheap. It costs as much as the same. So for the viewers that don't follow me on Instagram, I have a 2019 4Runner TRD Pro. So it's like the highest model. And that car is actually worth as much as the new Supra. And that's something I came upon. Like, I was like, wait, should I just buy the new Supra? Because I could also just daily that car just fine and still track with it too. But then I thought about it and I was like, I don't need 2 track cars now. Like I have a quote unquote sports car already. What's the point of owning another one? Let's get something else. Let's get something that's different, a little more comfortable, a little more utility, and like I can do different things with it. So like you actually reached out to me after I went off-roading for the first time. And actually that's like a totally different experience. It's crazy because I remember, I think it was, so Kevin, shout out to Kevin. How would you even shout him? Like
Star Cruiser Drive Yard.
Star Cruise Drive Yard. Yeah. So he's actually told me like, oh, you're going to have so much fun in that car. I was like, really? And he told me, he's like, you're going to have the most fun and the craziest adrenaline rush driving at 5 miles per hour. And I was just like, what? He says like, you're going to be going so slow, but you're going to get the craziest adrenaline rush from it. And then like, sure enough, I went out there and then it was like just the type of stuff you do while you're driving on trails or you're trying to like descend like a big cliff or something. It's like, it's crazy because you're not, the speedometer is not even registering a speed. You're just rolling, and it's like I'm literally puckering. Like I'm like, like when you just go off or something, you're like, oh, like that was scary as shit. Like, dude, I had that feeling like just driving like super slow in a truck, and so that's an experience that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Like if I had bought that Supra, I can't go off roading,
Yeah.
And so it's like I think it was the right choice because I can also tow the Corolla now too. So, yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoy owning that car, and then plus it's a Toyota. It just makes a really good daily. So, yeah, it's been a good experience so far. It's actually, yeah, like I said, it's made me enjoy owning the Corolla so much more because, yeah, it's not the greatest car to daily drive personally, man. I used to tell people all the time, it's possible to do it. Maybe not the best choice, but now having actually a real daily driver, it's like, oh, I think you'll get more out of the car if you get a daily driver.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you'll appreciate that car much more as a second car, a third car rather than your main car.
Yeah, because I mean, like a Miata's not the greatest daily either, but before the Corolla, I dailied a Miata, and I would say a Miata, even ironically, even though it's a 2-seater, like convertible, it still made an okay daily just because it was a newer car. Like it didn't have the same reliability issues as the 86. So it was a lot easier to daily and a lot more forgiving to daily than the Corolla. Because I thought when getting the Corolla, I was like, it's a hatchback. It has 4 seats. It should be fine. Like, no, it's an old car. It's an 80s car. It's still going to be very uncomfortable. Whenever the Corolla went down or something and I would take my sister's car or something, I wouldn't think anything of the trip that I had to take. Whereas in the Corolla, like almost every trip I take in it is memorable because it's stressful. If it makes any sense, So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hope there's a time where I could drive the car on the street more comfortably, but like as the current state of things, especially here in the Bay Area, maybe it's just the Bay Area thing, but it's like pretty dangerous to drive the car around all the time. So, taking it off the streets has actually like relieved a lot of stress on my mind. And also now I can also just wrench on it. Before, I always had the stress of like, oh, I need to install this part. I need to get it done by today.
Because I got to go to school.
Yeah. Now it's like, I need to order this bolt. Leave the car, like just close the hood and leave it, and I can get back to it on my free time, So, and then it's so actually it's another good point because before, even on my free time, I wouldn't want to get to those little things on the car, like my stereo doesn't work or something small, like something small repair that you always tell yourself you'll get to later, but you don't get to it. I can actually get to those now because before I would always be fixing the car by necessity. And then that left it so that I didn't want to wrench on the car on my free time. I'd rather just spend my free time either studying or like just enjoying my free time, like talking to my friends or just, doing something else. I don't want to work on the car. But now that I spent time away from it, it's like, oh, well, there's that one thing on the Corolla I've always wanted to work on. Let's do that now. So it's like, it's allowed me to do that. And, so, I don't know, like, I can't say it will work out for everybody that way because, some people just lose motivation. They'll just get rid of the project. And that's something I personally fear as well. But that hasn't happened so far because every time I step out in the garage now, I just say like, oh, man, I want to drive this car. Like, I want to find the next time I can drive this car, So, and then, well, because I'm working on the standalone right now, I can't. So that's currently the motivation, So, yeah. Not gonna lie though, taking the car apart has given me some anxiety though, because I'm also for those that don't know, I've graduated in the spring and I've been on the job search, the COVID job search. So it has given me some anxiety knowing the fact like I've been interviewing all these places recently and I might have a car that could sit unfinished. So that actually has been driving me to like try to finish it before I even start working, just so that it doesn't have to sit there taken apart. Because I know how that goes, it sits there, you lose motivation, and then you inevitably sell it, right? So that's what I want to avoid with that car. I just want to keep it running, And so actually, to touch on the topic we talked about a little earlier about letting, the professionals do it sometime, something I thought about doing with that car was getting a roll cage done on that car eventually, right? And having gone through the formula program at school, I know how to design a roll cage and draw it in CAD and then get the tubes cut and whatever. Like I even know how to weld, right? But for me to like figure out the time, like the materials and like just the tooling to do my own roll cage in my own car. Well, I love that car, right? Like it's a classic. It's almost a classic at this point. I want the parts on it to be really nice. Who wants a booger welded cage in their car, you know? And honestly, like if I welded the car personally, it probably won't turn out that good. It'll work, but it won't turn out as good as like a professionally done shop. And not only that, it would take me so long because I'm learning as I go. Whereas a professional, if you pay them for it, it's like, this is their profession. They need the car out of the shop by next week. They're going to finish it this week. You don't have to wait anymore. I can just take the car back from them with the roll cage already done. Beautiful welds. Just have to put the car back together and I can drive it again. You know, I could weld the cage myself, but you know, I don't even have an estimate of how long that would take, you know? So it's like, sometimes you just got to learn to step away from it, even though you might not want to, I guess. I that's a takeaway I actually had listening to Eric's and like a couple other guys' podcasts, but it's like definitely okay to take a step back sometimes, you know, just like let someone else do the job, man, you know, because then sometimes it's worth your time, right? Like working cars, man, it's sometimes like definitely a passion project, you know.
Last topics. Do you have any questions for me or any topics you want to bring up?
Well, I want to see you on track more. I know you're very busy, but I hope to see you on track again.
Why? What the fuck?
No, just because it's a good time seeing you out there, man. It's always fun having more company, especially people that you already know.
I felt, you know what really bothered me last time is because before this last track day, I thought both of us were like really evenly matched.
Yeah.
And then the last time we went to Laguna, I thought I was like way outclassed. Like,
no, dude, I just think you maybe just didn't have the greatest day, man. You know, so I mean that happens to all of us. Okay, so actually, to personally share, I went out to Thunderhill West this last time, and I'd have to say that's probably the first track day I didn't enjoy the entire time. Like because well. Nothing wrong with the car. Like the car was performing just fine. It was just like I was not setting any times. Like I was actually driving slower than I usually do. And I didn't understand why. And like I just summarized it as like, well, okay, so there's something called like, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called the Donning-Kruger effect. But basically it's a graph, and it basically says like when you just learn something, like this is how much you think you know. Like it ramps up really fast. But once you actually get into it and you realize what you actually know, you realize you actually don't know that much, and it plateaus. You actually know this much, not like a ramp. So you straighten out. And then once you actually understand everything and reach mastery level, you realize you're actually only a little above that middle ground, and you're actually not like way up here. And where I'm going with that is that like it's very easy for a beginner to feel the sensation of progression. Like because you're such a beginner, every time you go out there, you make such big progressions. I go out there and I'll drop like 2-3 seconds. And that's, you know, for a really good racer, 2-3 seconds is huge when you go out and drop 2-3 seconds. But for a beginner, 2-3 seconds is not that much because you're still learning a lot. And you're going to be dropping a lot of time because you're just progressively getting better. And then you reach this point where you plateau. And then, of course, like, you're not going to feel as excited about plateauing, you know, because you're already used to that level. So then I think that's what happened there was I just kind of hit that plateau and I was like, not having a good time. And I realized like, well, I still got to go out there and drive the car all day as hard as I wanted. And in fact, this is the first time I went out to Thunderhill where I'm like drifting the car like around the corners because I'm taking the corners so fast at this point that I'm just drifting through them. And that was the first for me. And then at that point, I just realized like, well, I had a good time sliding the car around the entire day. I mean, that's what Corollas are known for. They're known to slide like really well. And I was just like, well, that was fun. Like, you know, the last turn before the front straight.
Oh, of course.
On the Thunderhill West, right before the tire wall. Dude, I slid the car and it was sliding towards the wall. And then right when I shifted, it just went straight and pulled away from the wall. And I was like, that was crazy. But that was so fun. This is what drifting must feel like, getting close to the wall and everything like that. And I was just like, well, I had fun there. At least I had fun doing that. And so I kind of tried to adjust my behavior, or not behavior, I guess behavior reaction to that day. And I was like, okay, maybe I did have a better time than I expected. Better time than I thought. Maybe not as I expected, but it was still a good time, So you just have your good days and your bad days. And that's what I basically attributed it to. I was just like, I was probably just not having the best day out there, because then usually I'm used to going out there and dropping time, and this is the first time where I literally did not set a time the entire day. And it was pretty disappointing. But then, like I said, just adjust your mood. And so that I felt better about it after. But I still have to say to you, though, it was one of the most unsatisfying track days. So I do know how that feels, or I can't say I know exactly how it feels, but what I think is that everybody has their good days and bad days, man, And so I think you'll have a good day again. It's just I don't think it's necessarily skill, because like you said, what your fastest time is 58, right? At Laguna, 158.
59 in a FRS, 2 in two flat in a Corolla.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that far off, man. I got 156 and that's where I stopped that day, So it's 4 seconds seems like a lot, but it's not that bad, man. You're not that far off. In fact, it's funny that you said that, because I felt so outclassed by Grant. I just remember going down the front straight of Laguna. It's kind of an uphill for those that don't know. I'm in 4th gear, full throttle. I can't go any more than that. 5th gear is slow, right? And Grant's in front of me, and he's pulling away from me. And then
yeah, you got to consider 30 more horsepower.
Yeah, no. There's definitely a horsepower difference, but then I noticed just how fast he was taking the corners, and I was just like, oh man, I'm so slow compared to him. But I still had a great day that day. So don't worry about feeling outclassed, because I'm sure there's always someone faster than
of
us,
course,
right?
Of course,
so,
yeah.
I'd rather see you out there, than not.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. So after you said that, yeah, I may do more track days, but I'll tell you, the last Laguna day we did, man, that really...
Yeah, man. Maybe you just needed a good break too,
Yeah.
Because I from my understanding, you were pretty busy that day, or the days...
Month
before. So, that definitely attributes to, how you're feeling and stuff. And, if you're stressed out, and it's hard to feel better about things. So.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for a transmission or rear end swap on that car?
This one you might think I'm a little crazy for, but I love the Corolla enough that I might put a Samsonus box in it.
What is that?
It's a racing transmission. So it's basically just a dog box, because what triggered this for me was I watched Running Free's drifting video, one of his drifting videos, and he had a review done on it recently, and then I actually found out he has an HKS dog box in that car from a FC RX-7, I think. And it caused me to start looking at dog boxes. And I think the HKS dog box goes from anywhere from 2 to 3K used. I might be wrong. I might just be looking in the wrong places, but a quick Google search showed that it was 2 to 3K. And then I was just like, that's pretty damn expensive. So I was like, well, how much is a Quaife box worth, right? And then so Quaife, so Samsonus is kind of like Quaife. They're just kind of a high-end racing transmission manufacturer. But the box costs about $5 to $6 grand for an H pattern dog box, and it will come with the correct input shaft for your application. You just have to work out the bell housing, obviously. But it made me think that it's I'm going through all this work just to put in custom stuff. I might as well just throw in the one I want, or the one that will work, And so I've been toying around with the idea that once I'm balling, have an engineering career and a salary and whatnot, then I'll probably just try to put a racing transmission in there, or some kind of dog box or something, just move away from the standard stuff, because then it might be easier to just fit if I do the custom work, So No, I wouldn't say easy. I mean, what I'm trying to say is it might be feasible enough to do because I know what I'm getting myself into by making it myself, you know.
So I don't think you're crazy. I think that's a interesting choice, but not like a choice I question.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you exactly why. Like value per dollar. You know that I had this conversation with Jeff Wilson again. So that FRS Impulse Trans in Grant's car was more money or equal amount of money to Jeff's Formula D dog box. Yeah.
No, so
pretty much. So
that's exactly how I went. Okay, I skipped a step in my story. I saw the HKS dog box and I started looking up Quaife transmissions. And I sent it to one of my friends and I told him like, hey, I might just stick one of these in instead. And then like I started looking into. Oh, sorry. I'm all confused right now. It's pretty late. But I was originally looking at a Formula D video with Stefan Papadakis, and he was reviewing his Supra that he just built for Frederick Osbo. And the Formula Drift transmission that everybody uses is a NASCAR G-Force transmission. I think it's like a 4-speed H pattern, and it's just a really solid transmission. And it actually costs like $3,000,
which is not that much.
Not that much. Yeah. No, so where I was going with this is that it costs just as much as that HKS dog box that people were custom mounting. It's that HKS dog box is for an FC. It's not even for the
Corolla,
86.
yeah.
So someone had to do the custom work for that. So if you're already going through the trouble of finding a custom bell housing or mount or whatever to mount that transmission, you might as well just go get the transmission you want and then make the adapter for it. Or it might end up costing the same. And so that's where I came around that thought process was that sometimes it's easier to just do the fabrication work and fit it yourself, you know? Like instead of waiting for a kit or something like that. Because then if you wait for a kit, it might take, you know, like that Impulse kit, came out a year or two ago?
It came out a while ago.
Okay.
I had to wait, let's just call it 8 months for it.
But let's say last 5 years, right?
Yeah.
How many guys are into Corollas that are like not into them now because they're too old for them? And it's just like they didn't have a good transmission, you know, like they didn't have this option. And only now are these options starting to come out. And some of these guys don't even want to bother to get back into an 86 chassis, you know. It's just like missed opportunity for those guys, you know, just because you were waiting around for parts. And given not everybody has the resources or know how to custom make their own parts, you know. But my point is that sometimes if you want something, it might be easier to just make it yourself or get it to the specification that you wanted if it's already involving so much work, you know. And this was one of those cases, is because those like the Formula D transmission, probably the one Jeff's using too, the G-Force one, it's $3,000. And how much was the Impulse kit? To put together for an average person?
More than that.
Way more, right?
Dude, just to buy that kit was more than $3,000. So.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure. So someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those input shafts come in custom sizes. You can have them sized to a certain size, and then all you have to do is get a bell housing to match it up. And then like maybe you should check out Modify Up's video, but he showed how to make an adapter, and it's really not that hard to make an adapter to adapt transmissions. You know, so it's like. People like that have opened my eyes to the fact that, maybe it might be cheaper to just spec out the transmission that is good, you know, that you might want. Because then the advantage of these motorsport transmissions are they're usually very small.
Oh.
Yeah, they're usually very short. And then they usually come in applications where they'll tell you, like, we can make an input shaft for this, or we can make a bell housing for this, or stuff like that. It's just that people usually aren't willing to fork the money to do this. So then, and to be frank, most people aren't competing at the level of Formula D. Like me and you, we're never going to build a car like that probably, you know, for competition at least. And so we don't have to look at these parts. So we would never even know they were available, you know, because it blew me away to see a company say that we can make any input shaft. Like we can fit this into any car. Just give us the spec and we can do it. And I was just like, it's that simple? I had no idea. Like, but it's just a lot of money, you know, so it's definitely a lot of money. So I don't know about the differential, but to answer your question about the transmission, that one has been lingering on my mind because we talked about this last time, and I asked you like, so the day that comes that I have to rebuild this again, like, is it even possible? And I think you told me like it might not be. Like,
we're at that point.
Yeah, no. So you were telling me like it might not be.
It's the tail end of 2020, and we're already at that point.
Yeah,
where T50 is like it's impossible to rebuild right now.
Yeah, no. So I told myself personally that if my transmission blew, I would be willing to take the car down for that amount of time just to fit that custom transmission, because it's already going to be an expensive job. Either way, I might as well put a good one in there. And then so the takeaway from this is that the gear ratios that they're able to provide are super close to what the T50 provides. And in fact, probably better. I don't know much about transmission ratios, but if I showed you, you'd probably like say like, this is probably good enough to run, because I noticed the ratios were really close to what the T50 was. And in fact, they may be a little shorter. So, good for like a track car, So, I know that the rally cars and stuff run a lot of like the Crave transmissions and stuff. And so I went on the website and I looked, and yeah, so sure enough, Quaife actually makes custom like parts to fit the transmission. It's just that usually it's so expensive that your normal consumer wouldn't go looking or wouldn't even look for the pricing for it, because it's just so expensive, to do. It's easier to put in a W58 because there's already a kit for it, right? Or a J160 because there's already a kit for it. But then eventually those are going to end up with the same problem.
Yeah.
So I just wanted something that's more rebuildable, Okay, so maybe a Samsonite transmission is pretty extreme, but at the cheaper end of the spectrum, you can get a G-Force transmission for like $3,000. And like it'll be good enough for what you need it to do, So, and then if I remember correctly, those transmissions are pretty compact as well. So then you can probably fit the shifter where you need it to, Jeff probably knows a little more about that than I do, but yeah, I did do a little research into that because I was thinking about it myself. Like, I do want to drive the car for a long time, probably not at a competitive level, but enough to beat on the transmission that I probably should consider a better one, So yeah, that's one that I don't want to think about, but you brought it up. So, but it's a differential. I think it should be fine, especially if I stay at 4A. But like, say if I ever decide to go like K-swap or something, you probably have to look for something else. And I really don't know the option for the differential because you're stuck with the solid rear. I don't want to go forward rear because I don't want to go 5-lug or use the Ford brakes.
Or add like 100 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know what I'd do about the diff. I think I would just try to get the panic axles that just dropped, if anything, just to like bulletproof it, because I don't think a 4A will break those axles. But I think that's about all I can do to the diff because I don't want to add more weight to it. So
yeah.
And that's actually what's keeping me from building a competitive car out of an 86. Because a lot of people ask me that, like, why don't you just K-swap it? Because then like they see me like road racing and stuff. And this might be surprising to you. I might have not expressed this to you before, but I don't ever actually want to take the Corolla into a competitive form because I feel like it would take away from the feel of the car. So when I said earlier that I want to do a cage, I actually only want to do a half roll bar. So like remove the rear seats and just the roll bar back. Because I still want to keep the carpet and the dash up front because I still want it to feel like a street car when I drive it. I don't want it to be a full-on race car because that's not, I could build it out of it. I could definitely do a K-swap and probably make it competitive, but it's just like, why try so hard to make this thing competitive when I just have fun driving it at the track as it is? Like, I'd rather just have that as the fun car that I take, like, say John wants to go on like a track day or something, and then like just like a random one on a random weekend, I could just take that car instead of like taking out a fully built race car, like, because like the fully built race car would be good for competition, but it might not be good for your regular old track day, right? So I had this thought a lot actually when people started K-swapping their cars a lot. I started thinking about this a lot. Oh, Miatas too. When people started K-swapping their Miatas, and then that's when I was like, do I want to turn the car into that? Because once you put the K-swap in, the transmission is already handled, but the next thing you got to worry about is the diff, and then you got to worry about the brakes, and then it's because then you're upgrading to a bigger engine, so it's something that like I said, I don't want to go 4 to 8.8. Super rears are super hard to come by now. So it's like, I don't want to do all this custom work just to make the car competitive, like I'd rather just keep the car as a fun car. So that's where I'm at with the car, really. If anything, I'd rather just like buy like an FRS and like case swap it or something if I wanted to build a competitive chassis. So, yeah, no, I think I know what I want out of the Corolla, and like I'm trying to be realistic with it, because I'm not trying to make it something that it's not, I guess. So, yeah, so don't expect to see like slick tires on it or anything like that, because it's probably not going to reach that point. I just want to keep the car as a street car. Like we probably talked about this here and there just in passing and stuff, but it definitely resonated with me. The fact of just keeping the car as like a, like fun car, like street car, like so something I enjoyed personally was some of the old like option videos and stuff, right? Where you would see the car on the track, but then the moment you open the door, the car had full interior. It had the checkered floor mat. It had like this fancy Gretty shift knob. It had a Vertex like steering wheel, like fully done interior, with the Cusco wraparound cage and everything. Like that to me is like what a street car looks like. It has the interior still, but it has all these little mods and stuff, right? Like that's kind of the image that's been ingrained in my mind, because that's the era of tuning that I was watching as I was growing up. So I kind of want that vibe in the Corolla, which is why I got like the checkered floor mats and whatnot. And so, yeah, it's because like with the Miata that I owned before, I started like taking stuff out of it and making it more of a race car, and it just felt more like a machine than it did like a car that you get into to drive to the store or something, right? And so then that goes back to what I was saying earlier about not enjoying driving the car to do your regular like errands and stuff, So I know it does seem counterproductive to say that, because my car is kind of hard to street in the way it is, but I don't want it to make it less streetable than it already is, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So, because then if you do that, then I won't enjoy it. I won't enjoy it on the street anymore. So, especially with a case swap, like you can't drive that around safely without worrying about getting pulled over either. So that's my reasoning, at least. Maybe someone else has different reasoning, but that's enough for me to like know my limit with the Corolla. So yeah, and I do also just want to enjoy other cars.
Oh yeah,
that's the other part of it. You know, I don't want to build this crazy race car out of the Corolla, because I want the chance to build other cars. So that's really the best answer of where I stand with the Corolla, I guess.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you coming to the shop in person to do this podcast. I specifically wanted to give you the privilege of episode 100, and I'll kind of tell you why. So, like, first of all, we touched on this earlier, but I mean, I appreciate you supporting me since day one. I mean, you saw me like grind through my garage, and I mean, I think you said at one time you talked about like people doing YouTube full time, and you were like, yeah, man, you're pretty much doing like, your media thing full time now. So yeah. I mean, I've talked to these the new BG guys about how like, yeah, man, you know why there's so many Chris Van episodes is because I was trying to bang him out. But like, what I didn't realize was like how popular all your episodes has been. Is like you've been like a celebrity in yourself.
Oh, thank you. No, it's still quite shocking to me too, because I'll just talk to someone about something. Like someone would just reach out to me, ask a question about like something I did, and I'll tell them, and then we'll just end up in another conversation, and I'll tell them like, oh yeah, I did this one time. I'll tell them a story, right? And then they'll be like, yeah, I heard that on the podcast. And I'll be like, that's so weird to me, man. Still, first off, I didn't even know you listened to the podcast. I didn't even know you followed, because I don't look at those things, right? I don't look at to see who these people are following. I didn't even know you followed Ezekiel. Like, I didn't know you were a listener of the podcast. It's so new to me. But at the same time, like, it's cool to know, like, people are willing to stick around and listen, because sometimes I feel like I'm just ranting or I'm just rambling, like, because like I talked about this a long time ago before ever having done a podcast with my friend. with people before. I told them like, dude, I could probably not start my own podcast, but I could definitely see myself on a podcast because I could talk about cars for like forever. You know, like it's such an interest of mine. So I just hope I don't sound like I'm rambling to some of these people. So far, the feedback has shown that the people have enjoyed it, and then like it's still so shocking to me, man. Like it's so like every time you tell me, I'm just like, oh, thank you, man. But I really like don't know how to react to it, man. Yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. It's been a good experience because I mean, like I like talking cars, you know. So
yeah, man. I mean, we're not done yet. I'm looking forward to episode 1000.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, man.
So, yeah,
oh, yeah.
and so yeah, like I really look forward to where we end up because I mean, dude, like just meeting you in the first place as like to give the listener some background story, you were the guy who like bought my buddy's car and wrecked it. So
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, maybe we can put it to perspective for them in a different one. I don't know if we've already talked about it, but
yeah.
No, I mean it is.
So yeah, to like see where like we first met to like where we are now, and then like I look forward to like where we end up and where the cars end up, and like shit, time moves so fast, and where the cars are gonna end up next year in the next 6 months, right?
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, it's quite exciting.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I appreciate it again. We will see you back soon, hopefully, for like Chris Van episode number 10 or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it, man. And then shout out your social before you go.
Oh, yeah. No, so my Instagram is Chris Vanish. I don't remember my YouTube thing, but there's not that many interesting things on there. My Instagram, I post a lot of my build progress as I go sometimes.
Yeah. Start a YouTube, man. You got a lot of interesting stuff. You got to start a YouTube.
I actually want to. I just don't know how to approach it. So maybe that's something we can talk about sometime. But yeah, no, I definitely want to do some videos here and there because there's times where like I was working on the car and I fabricated something and I was like, wow, that was a clever way to do that. And I was just like, oh, I wish I could show someone, you know? And then like gone are the days of a write-up. Actually, I talked about this with Koji. And so actually before I get off, I want to do 2 shout outs. One to Koji because Koji has been a big resource to all my questions that I have about like engine swaps or like 4As or standalones. He's been a huge help and like just the wealth of knowledge he is. And the other one is no, sorry, I was just trying to remember what I was trying to say. But the other shout I want to give is to Seb from Modify Up because I was watching I listened to your podcast with him and I watched some of his videos. I think he definitely deserves a lot more views than he has because the stuff he does is so fucking interesting, man. Like that, like as an engineer, as myself, like I really appreciate the work he does, especially how he tries to break it down and do it. He tries to do it at a level for non-engineers to understand, and I think that's great because that's something I have difficulty doing at times. And yeah, no, that's great. But anyway, it's a. All right, where was I?
Giving shout outs to people who, and then trying to start YouTube.
Where I was going with this is that I do want to do my own video and stuff eventually because like all these times where I'm talking to like Koji and getting advice and stuff, we would talk about it and me and Koji would be like, hey, like this would make a really good write-up. And I straight up told him, I was like, dude, honestly, if Club 4AG was still around, I would have just gone onto the forum right now, opened a new thread and started writing the write-up right now because I had just stumbled upon something, right? And so me and Koji always joke about it is that our DMs have so much resources in it because we send so many part numbers and like technical threads and like stuff like that on like diagnosing problems and stuff that it's so valuable that it feels like such a waste being just a DM being amongst us. So then what Koji actually did was he actually found a way to save the DMs from Instagram onto an HTML so that we have it as a chat conversation so that potentially one day we could put this on a build thread or something because all the discoveries I made while doing this wiring harness, I think there's people haven't even stumbled upon some of this stuff. Like some of the part numbers that I've come upon on like for the firewall grommet, right? For like the wiring harness, like it's definitely discontinued from Toyota. The grommet that goes through the firewall for the chassis harness, that's discontinued. But I found one that fits it perfectly. because I measured it, and I just went through a parts catalog and tried to find a grommet that fit. And then, yeah, sure enough, I have a brand new grommet on my wiring harness right now. And so little things like that I want to share with the world, but I just haven't found a way to do it yet. So eventually I do want my own or maybe not YouTube channel, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it, but it's just because I don't know how to approach it yet. But I do want to put my resources out there eventually, because I realized something researching through all this is that the documentation is all lost after like 2014 or whatever it was that Club 4AG went down, and then Facebook just took over. So yeah, no, I mean, I would love to do videos sometime. Maybe I could start off like collabing with you in the beginning or something like that, but it would be great to do it eventually. So yeah, but yeah, so for now, the only social I have is Chris Vanish on Instagram. I post a lot on my stories sometimes because I don't feel like all my content is worthy of like a full post. But maybe I should just start doing it, because some of this stuff is pretty interesting, and I know some of these people like want to know how to do this stuff. So yeah, no, I'd be willing to do it sometime. So yeah, no, thanks for having me. I kind of went on a little at the end
good,
there,
man.
but yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. It's been a real honor, really, to see how much this podcast has grown. Like you said, like we said in the beginning, you started off as like 60 views per month, and now you said what, like three to 4 grand like viewers.
Oh yeah, getting my target's 3,000 a month, so we're getting like pretty much there. So
yeah, man, that's you said you've been doing this podcast for 2 years.
Yeah, this will be 2 years coming up.
That's great, man. So so congrats.
Well, I mean, thank you to the listeners too, man. Thank you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you guys.
Chris Van, episode 100. Appreciate it again, dudes. That's it for this week's episode. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, as reviews really help support us. You can do it straight from your desktop. Don't even need an Apple device. This is Autohaus Z. Thanks for all the support, you guys.